I wanted to go over this chart because I think it's a very important chart to show you the Bitcoin cycle essentially. So at the minute, it seems like the cycle's over. Many people are doubting themselves, they're doubting the cycle, they're doubting the market, and really there's quite a lot of people that are unsure of the next moves as such. We're unsure if this is essentially the market top. Have we created a distribution here, and are we going to return to then go lower and sell off into liquidity and create a bear market scenario? And whilst I do see there is risk, there is definitely still risk to see further downside. I don't necessarily see this being the bear market top, the bull market top just yet. I don't see this as being the final high before we then sell off lower. I believe the likelihood is we'll probably take this liquidity and we'll continue higher one more time into higher regions before we sell off lower. And there's a few reasons why I think like that. One of them is because of a timeline involved in what we're seeing. Another reason is my other charts that I've shown you in the past as well, such as USDT dominance. I still wholly believe that this chart is going to deliver to these regions that I've been tracking for the best part of a few years now, and I wholly believe we are simply returning into a monthly supply level, which is this box here, into refined supply levels such as the daily that we've come up to and mitigated up here on this last point of supply here, where we've tapped in, we've created this range condition, and we've started to distribute essentially, going lower and lower each time. We've got this demand here, and this is the first level that I'm looking at for a reversal. Because what we could essentially be doing here is we could be doing a push to the downside, some relief, back up to the upside, into some of these higher levels. That's still not off the cards yet. It's still very much in play and could happen. But what I'm really interested in here is seeing downside delivered below this region, to see this fail and to essentially see us flip bearish from this level, essentially moving from a bullish structure to a bearish structure once we invalidate some of these levels here. Going back to the Bitcoin chart, if I just take you back to halving dates again and look at the timeline. So when we look at past data, we can see what I've done is I've mapped out essentially the halving dates since inception, and then I've tracked the bull period in the market from the halving date to the absolute high of the cycle, and then what I've done there is I've tracked the bear cycle as being the absolute high from the bull down to pretty much the lows of the bear before it then flips into bullish mode, and same again here. And then the recovery phase, which is essentially the first low that causes the up move, signifies the recovery all the way to halving. And what you can see is, with the exception of the first cycle where we have quite a short bull cycle, we have a cycle of 365 days from the first halving, and then we have a bear cycle of roughly 420 days down to these lows, and then we have a recovery phase of around about 530 days up to halving, and then we start essentially the bull cycle again after halving, and then we have a period of 518 days from the second halving, then a period of 420 days of downtrend into the lows, very similar to what we have from the first cycle, and then we have a period of 469 days of recovery essentially from that low to halving. Roughly similar to the 530 days, but still a bit more condensed. And then we have the last cycle, excluding this one. And then, so if you look at the BTC halving, we had halving the 11th of May 2020. We have a 546 days of bullish price action. In that period, we also see a 50%, 56% correction to the downside, but it recovers, continues to move to the highs, continues the bull phase higher, and then we top out, ending the bull cycle at 546 days. Very similar to what we've seen on the prior cycle. And what's even more interesting is when you take the absolute high, so this high here at 69,000, and then you project and you understand how many days we've been downtrending in there, and if we just zoom in, you can see that up until this candle here, before this bullish recovery candle, you can see that we'd had 420 days of downtrend, essentially exactly the same as what we had here, where we had 420 days of downtrend up until that last candle here, and then we started the recovery on these sets of candles going up, and that is basically the same on this cycle here. And then again we have a period of 469 days of recovery where price moves from its bear market lows back into a premium price, essentially back into higher pricing after the bear market forms a bottom, as well as once halving kicks in we see an explosive move to the upside. So where are we right now? Well, when you look at the chart, we are approximately, I think, about 346 days, 350, yeah, so 343 days post halving. So that is essentially 346 days. Let's have a look. That puts us close to the first Bitcoin top, essentially. So there was 346 days up until that top there, and then we've seen a dramatic sell-off into lows, back into new highs. And I think we could be seeing the same again, where we see a reasonable sell-off into this demand area below. We've still got unmitigated areas here. Before then we see a recovery and reversal back into new highs, similar to this price action here. Not as extreme as this scenario, but certainly similar in nature, I think. I've plotted out the bull cycle end date based on the dates that we've seen to date. So ending after 546 days and 518 days. So what I've done is I've got some rough dates here based on what we've seen previously, and I'm expecting Bitcoin to top out around about 520 to, I'd say, 550 days post halving, and that sits us in around about August, September time. So that would likely mean that Bitcoin forms its top, its absolute high, around about September, October time. Sorry, August, September time. And what I'm expecting in the meantime is, based on the more intraday price action I'm looking at Bitcoin to essentially move into these regions here, into daily supply levels, which is what we're doing on total pairs, moving into daily supply of this range here, where it's following bearish order flow from these highs. And what I'm looking for is potential to see a reversal come in from this level. So we could see a reversal come in from this level to go lower, and my target would be this level here. It's unmitigated. It's essentially the last point of supply, last point of demand from this massive accumulation range. For me, it would be a mitigation of a previous accumulation range to reaccumulate further at these levels. We've had the accumulation range, we've had a breakout, return to breakout, and then continue higher is what I'd expect, in line with the whole timing of this cycle as well. I don't believe we're going to start bear cycle just yet, but I definitely think there is still potential to see this continue lower, to take this liquidity here, to come into this key level here, before then seeing higher prices into new highs. The other option would be I'd like to see some levels get flipped in this range. If we can start to flip some of these levels, like this level and this level, with some body closes to the highs, above the highs, then it's likely we could potentially see a flip of that level and then continue higher. But right now, my main focus is this first daily supply level, which is basically the inverse of what we'd see on stablecoin dominance pairs, where they're coming into demand before a potential another push higher. And I'll show you that on stablecoin dominance pairs, where you can see that all we're doing is returning to daily demand, just like we're returning to daily supply on other pairs, and there's that potential to see this push up one more time, or there is potential to see it create range conditions, flip from a bullish scenario to a bearish scenario, and then start to break down in this range and go lower. And overall, that's why I think we're still yet to really end the cycle. We've still got time left. If you look at the cycle clock alongside some of the levels still available to us, none of this, to me, this double bottom scenario here with monthly demand and clean levels, it's still very much unclear, and this to me looks more like a topping structure now after a few more weeks than it did initially when we were first pumping it there. So for me, with this whole structure in mind and idea, I still think we are going to see price deliver to these levels, and that should really spark the last leg of the bull market, which aligns to what I'm seeing over on my charts with it all mapped out in terms of the historical price data. So yeah, if you're worried, I wouldn't really be at the minute, to be honest. I think the cycle is just really testing our patience here, but based on the past data, which is extremely correlated, if you take a look, like, it doesn't get much more correlated than this. Like 546 days to the absolute high, 518 days to the absolute high. It's very close data. 420 days of bear, and then again we have 420 days of bear perfectly. 469 days of recovery up to the halving point. What do we have? 469 days to the halving during the recovery phase, and then we've restarted that cycle. So again, I'd expect it would be reasonable to expect around about 550 to 520 days of bull cycle post halving. So for me, this whole event here is likely a pullback into higher time frame demand and back into this demand range, back into this accumulation range, where we've broken out of, retest, continue higher, and then that should form the top as we come into these higher levels, as we take this liquidity, and as we start to come into the end of the year. And that's what I'm looking for.